Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, 3 Principles Practitioner, Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading 3 Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I am so excited to have in the studio with me today a wonderful woman who I've only just met, but I feel like I've already known her for forever because I'm always listening to her Unashamedly Human podcast, and that is Jacquie Forde. Jacquie is a gifted teacher, coach, and intuitive with a wide range of professional qualifications from nursing to shamanic healing to 3 principles, to name but a few. After 3 decades spent in corporate UK, Jacquie left the 9-to-5 behind to create her own successful business over 7 years ago. These days, Jacquie has a thriving physical practice located in Scotland, in addition to her global online practice. She is passionate about sharing her knowledge and allowing her clients the space to embrace their own innate wisdom to tap into their highest potential. And thank you so much for being with me today, Jacquie. We're just going to laugh our way through today's podcast, I can tell. For those that couldn't see, she pulled her tongue out at me just to make me laugh.
It was all getting too serious
It
for
was
me.
way too serious. I love that. Well, thank you so much. I know you're probably suffering a bit of jet lag today. You just flew in yesterday, and I can't thank you enough for being here. I'm so excited.
It's a pleasure to be here, and it's so interesting. Everybody keeps telling me how I should feel.
Oh, yeah, really. You should feel jet lag.
Like, hello, I'm okay. I'm okay at the moment.
You're
I'm
okay. Great. All right. So if you like sort of melt into a pool, I'll just ignore it a bit. So I am fascinated by the journey you've been on all your life. You've done so many different things, and just tell me a little bit about, you were a nurse, a midwife. I particularly want to hear about the shamanic work you did, but give me a little bit about what you've done up to this point.
Ooh, the journey of life, isn't it? It's about how we evolve and grow. I guess I always felt something was missing, Del, and I was just never really sure what that was. You know, as a kid, I went to Sunday school, I did all of that kind of stuff. I didn't want to call God because it felt restricted. I knew there was an energy, there was something that I didn't want to constrict. So all of my life I've been sort of looking and searching just to try and find out about who I was versus who everybody told me I should be.
Yeah.
Just saying that again there.
Exactly.
And
Started young.
do you know, I actually was accepted to go to university to be a journalist, but I was such a wild soul that I wanted to get out the house quicker than my university place. So I actually went away and did nursing and absolutely loved it. Yeah. Really, really loved it. I think that was the first space where I realised how joyful it was to be in service. Really be in service.
And laughter is so healing, and I'm sure that your patients had a ball with you and got better so fast.
Absolutely. I remember one particular New Year I was on at Hogmanay just going into the New Year, and I was in this little ward with men who had skin conditions. And as the bells were coming up, I had brought in some whiskey and I was giving them all wee whiskies and the wee medicine cups. And I remember getting into trouble for doing that. I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, life is so beautiful. Yeah, we get caught up in all this small stuff. Yeah. It doesn't make sense anymore.
I know, and I can't, and you spent so many years in corporate UK. In blue chip companies and things. How did that come about?
I think I left nursing and I knew there was more to me, so I went into sales. I'd always been really competitive. always. I think growing up in between 2 brothers was a big thing. And so I went into sales and worked in the pharmaceutical industry, worked my way up from, sort of general sales till actually I was doing kind of government affairs, so did marketing, all that kind of thing. And it was fascinating to me that it was very male-dominated, an environment I was used to, growing up with my brothers and all their friends. So it just felt like being at home. But there was this undercurrent, and again, that feeling that something wasn't quite right, but I didn't know what it was, and that's what really set me off on my self-help journey, because I thought, there's something wrong with me here, because I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm feeling things that I'm not sure about. So even although I had this crazy successful, experience in the corporate sector, I just didn't get it.
So how long ago was this when you felt that there was something that put you on that self-help path that most of us have been on?
I think I was about 27.
Oh, okay.
So 30 years ago.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, 30 years ago.
And what was that path? What did you start off with?
Oh, self-help books, first
Yeah,
of all.
oh, yeah, exactly. Oh, I know you listened to a podcast where you said your children could find you in a bookshop in that section. Me too. In fact, I took the whole section back to my house.
Oh my God, I think I've got that as well. Absolutely.
Finally threw them away last year.
Oh, no, I've kept them. I think they're still quite interesting. Yeah, so there was just something about that. So I started with the self-help, and then I discovered NLP. And I absolutely love neuro-linguistic programming. I really do. It taught me so much about me and my brain and language. I loved it. So I trained right up to master trainer level, and used to train other people on my weekends just to make more money, to do more self-help and self-development.
I love that.
And hypnotherapy I love, because I love the way that we can tell stories in this soporific way that helps bypass people's intellectual minds.
Yeah.
So I loved that. But even after doing all of that, I still felt something was missing. There was just something, and I couldn't put my finger on it. So then started to look at Wayne Dwyer or Kurt Tolle, Barbara DeAngelis.
Oh, God.
I love Barbara DeAngelis.
I used to do her 30 odd years ago making love workshops.
Really?
In LA. She was actually my very first, well, no, there was Healing the Shame That Binds. John Bradshaw was my very first little adventure into that whole area, but wow.
I did goddess workshops in Palm Springs and San Bernardino. Yeah, with Enemy. I loved it.
Yeah.
I told you what I said earlier. My brother at my daughter's wedding said,
yeah.
"You look like a real girl, Jackie," for the duration of the wedding. So me going and wearing big long dresses and pretending I was a goddess was a hoot.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Yeah, but that kind of led me again to my spirituality, Del, and then when I came across this understanding, I kind of went from searching to knowing.
Yeah, exactly.
Full stop.
No.
This is it.
And what I love about what you do is, clearly because I agree with it and I love it too, but you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You don't go, well, NLP doesn't work, or you don't abandon what's brought you to this point in your life. You still value it and you incorporate it and still continue to share with that understanding of the principles, but from such a deep area, because you know all of this other stuff too.
I know.
I love that.
I love that you're saying that too.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like Bill Pettit. Dr. Bill Pettit would say to you, if he's got a patient who's got an extremely busy mind, there is nothing wrong with giving them an anti-anxiolytic to get them into a quieter space, so they're then able to hear something. Okay? Yeah. It's the same for me. If I get a client who has a very busy mind and is suffering, then I will use conversational hypnosis to help quieten that person's mind down. I am still talking about the principles, but it's all unconscious. It's like I don't know I'm doing it until afterwards, and I'm kind of like, oh, right, there, I did that. Yeah. Or I used nested loops to tell stories, to help somebody see something more deeply. It fascinates me. It really fascinates me, because all of our learning is the sum of who we are, and why not?
Yeah, exactly. And I love that you say it's not even conscious, because when you're with somebody, you say that it's a soul-to-soul connection. So it's just it's what comes forward for you in that moment of what it is that will help facilitate the conversation or the understanding.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because ultimately that's where you want to get to with whoever you're with, is that soul-to-soul conversation. And it's like you're guided by mind to be there, to get there. And it's just getting yourself out of the way. I realised, Del, I have lived my life with so many rules and so many boundaries that I wasn't even aware of. And I've restricted my life and I've done things I shouldn't have done a lot of the time, but it's kind of like when you realise all of that is conceptual, and it's all made up.
Yeah.
Oh, the gloves are off. It's whatever happens. Now, I think in the Three Principles community, what they're not wanting people to do is to mix the principles with other modalities or techniques or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't happen when you're grounded. When you're deeply grounded, all that happens is what comes forth is what needs to come forth to help get the person or the soul to where they need to be, to hear what they need to hear.
Exactly.
You know, and I'm not doing NLP techniques or anything like that,
yeah.
but I am conversing in a way that helps people get their intellect out of the way.
Yeah, I totally see that and hear that. And it's it's not a technique or a tool or a skill that you're giving them. It's we are all these like cakes with all these incredible ingredients within us, and we're not going, oh, let's pull that one out and give you that one. It's just part of who we are. It's part of the makeup of who we are when we share ourselves.
Absolutely.
And I love that you do that too. It sounds like I listen to your podcast all day long. It's like, but that it's just, I feel that you share the feeling and the experience of the principles rather than, sort of teach them in an intellectual way. You're very down to earth, very grounded. And you talk about every day, I was just sharing with you, you remind me of Elsie Spittle in that way, that it's just ordinary life.
Yeah.
And showing up from that place, I just love. So I want to talk to you about some of the clients you work with. I know you have a special place in your heart for young people and some of the issues they're facing today, because they're I think with the internet, it was different when we were younger. We didn't sort of keep reading about some of the things that people write about now. I know there's encouragement to self-harm or to, anorexia. So talk a little bit about that, because I know you do work with young people.
I do love it. I do love it because I know what I was like at that age.
Yeah, exactly.
And it took me up until my late 40s to kind of figure out
so
how
you
how
were
life
you were an
works.
early one. I was more like 60.
So it's I kind of feel years and years ago, families would have all sat around a fire or in a cave or and shared stories about how life works and how people felt and what they experienced. And I think today in our world, it's so busy that as adults, we forget to do that with the young people, to share what life was like for us, and to share what life is like for us now. I tried to teach this understanding to my 3 daughters, and I get eye rolling and all sorts of stuff that I gave up.
Yeah.
And what I found myself doing, Del, was just sharing with them things that happened to me in the moments. Like, oh my goodness, I nearly went down a rabbit hole there, or I'm feeling tired and I know it's not a good idea to talk, about anything when I'm tired. Can we talk about it in the morning? And I've seen my girls evolve and grow. They can handle stuff that I would never have been able to handle at their age with no formal training of this understanding. And that really proved to me that you don't have to be in a class to learn this stuff. You really don't. So when you see that in your own children, and my daughters have been through all sorts of stuff, from self-harming to eating disorders, sort of relationship issues, you name it, it's been there. And knowing how I saw them evolve and knowing my understanding of the principles and life, I found that people were coming to me, Del. I never set out to say, I want to work with teenagers, or I want to work with eating disorders or self-harming or women. It just, that's what came to me. So when you've got a soul across from you, I just don't see the physicality, and we both have a mutual friend, that who was a client of mine. We just hang out. We hang out in this space of wonder and love and curiosity and lightheartedness. So people go from thinking they have a label of an eating disorder, or thinking they have a label of I self-harm and I'm depressed and I have anxiety, to this space of I'm just a wee bit confused.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not anxious. I'm not depressed. I'm human.
Yeah. And I love it. I was listening to something earlier today. You were doing a talk on the 3PGC, and that when you have somebody come to you that might have been diagnosed, you know, in the medical profession as having an eating disorder or self-harming, that you talk about, I remember you saying something like, well, that's just like me.
Yeah.
You know, I used to like...
I eat pies.
You eat pies. Do you blame your husband for it? I love that.
You know, often you say, you've made me eat pies. You know, we both laugh about it, which is quite funny. Do you know, and that
Yeah.
it's fascinating where our minds go, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, that particular story you're talking about was a young woman who'd had years and years of psychology and psychiatry, and she was only 16. So she'd already had about 4 or 5 years of traditional therapies. And we started working together, and she hadn't self-harmed for about 3 or 4 weeks, which our mum thought was absolutely wonderful. And then she didn't sleep well one night. She went into college. She wasn't thinking straight. She felt somebody was talking about her. Some girls had been mean and nasty to her. And then her final lecture of the day was all about suicide prevention or something like that. And she took a knife and she cut herself. And it was a craft knife, so it was sharper than normal, and cut herself. And I was meant to be speaking to her that evening. And her mum called me, and I just said, just let's talk.
Yeah.
Let me just speak to her. And we just hung out in that space of, so what?
Yeah. It was a hiccup.
It was a hiccup.
Yeah.
And that wee girl now is, or young woman, is now at college, making friends, thriving in life. You know, because it's not about, and I always say this as well, I'm not a counsellor.
Yeah.
I am not a therapist. I'm just going to teach you how your mind works. That is it.
Yeah.
You know, and for all my medical background, it's kind of like, it helps because it means that I understand some of the, you know, sort of the physiological things that can happen when we're in that state of constant stress. But knowing underneath all of that, there is this shiny, gorgeous little soul that's just like mine and just wants to come out to play.
Yeah, I know. It's so beautiful. I mean, you're bringing me to tears just listening to just the love. I mean, just the love we all have between each other.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I feel the same way with my boys. My boys have struggled with depression or, you know, thoughts of suicide. And I could see, I mean, like you said, I could see that they were perfectly healthy and whole underneath. And all I needed to do was just love them and be there. That's it.
Absolutely.
I didn't say, I let them talk. I also recognized my own innate well-being inside of me. It's like taking the oxygen mask and putting it on yourself first. Like, whew, okay, I'm centered. I'm okay. I'm being taken care of. Mine's got my back. And then I could just be there with them and see that in them and know that. And they've just come through. I mean, they've just really are thriving now. And it's just so beautiful. We were talking earlier, you mentioned something about socializing and what our young teens are doing, or young adults rather. So do you know what I'm referring to?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, yeah, I'd love you to speak to that.
No, because I think that's incredibly important, Del.
Yeah.
I remember when my youngest daughter went to university, and she was, as they do, partying a lot, drinking a lot, maybe not eating as well, not getting enough sleep. I remember her calling me one night and saying, "Mum, I'm having really, really dark thoughts." And I just said, "Okay, tell me about your last couple of days. What have you been doing?" And she said, "Oh, I've been at a couple of parties. I have been drinking a lot, Mum." Gave me the whole thing. And I remember saying to her that night, "Oh, hun, you're tired. Just go to sleep. Please, just go to sleep. And we'll talk in the morning. Know that I love you. Know that everything's okay." And she called me in the morning. She said, "You know, Mum, you were absolutely right. That was just something that was passing.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm okay." And I want to say that just because we'd spoken about depression.
Yeah.
Because my daughter has friends, boys who've been to university, and they've had those same dark thoughts, that same experience that she's had. but they didn't have the knowledge that they were just in a low state of mind, and they were believing the transient, neutral, impermanent thought that was flying through their heads, and they've committed suicide and died.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that environment, our young kids, or young adults, or teenagers, their minds are busy because there's all these social media things they want to keep up with to stay trendy. So the Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. And with that, there's judgment and there's comparison 24/7 going on in their wee heads, and their brains are still developing.
Yeah.
Their brains don't fully form till they're in their mid-20s. So at this stage in their life, what they're doing is they're laying down memory. Okay, our brain, because the brain and the mind are completely different things. The brain brain's biological, the mind is spiritual. So their brains are doing what their brains are meant to do. They're laying down memories so that when we're in a similar situation, it can store and retrieve information. And recently, Del, I just keep saying this. If you've had something happen to you when you've been a young teenager or a young adult, for example, a relationship breaking up, you've been with this person for about 4 years, 5 years, all of a sudden that relationship breaks up, but you're still only 20 or 21. Your brain is laying down that memory. But your brain is laying down that memory with the limited understanding that you have of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then what happens is you lay even more story on top of it till it becomes this huge, big ass belief that you carry consciously or unconsciously with you for the rest of your life. Until you get the gift of seeing that through mind, thought and consciousness, we're laying down these stories, whether we're aware of it or not. So this limited understanding in a non-fully formed brain is probably the source of many of the stories and the conditioning that we have about ourselves. So I teach young kids to know that, the physiological things that are happening, and just this innocent, limited understanding.
I love that word, innocent. When I first came across this understanding, that the fact that I had innocently been doing...
Total forgiveness.
It's like, oh my God, I'm off the hook. I don't have to defend myself anymore, because it is, we innocently do this, and we innocently, like you say, have that story and then find evidence to back that story up everywhere we look. And I love the work that you're doing. I love that because I certainly lived, I'm just turned 60, but I had a story from when I was like 3 years old that one of my first memories, that I made something mean something about me, and I continued and continued and continued up until I came across this understanding, which was very briefly about 10 years ago. But when I know what it really was, I immersed myself in the last 2.5 years. But prior to that, I just had a glimpse of it, and I was like, whoa, what is this? I like this. Because again, I'd been on that path of self-improvement. I'll fix myself, and when I'm fixed, I can do certain things. And this understanding is just like, wow, freedom.
Absolutely. Freedom. And again, innocently, society teaches us that the world works from the outside in, and not the other way around. So again, you're growing up and you're getting these areas of life that say, yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, that's how it works. But the wrong way round.
It does. And I remember my mother innocently but saying to me, you're driving me crazy. So I thought, oh, wow, I have all this power in the world. I can affect every single person's emotional reaction. It's like, and I didn't see it was a good thing. It was like I felt overly responsible for every upset or bad mood or whatever. I was hyper vigilant. But I just see that I was just making up shit, and I can make up other shit now.
Absolutely. I love that, though. What you're pointing to there is this gorgeous playfulness. Just as we can, we don't, and I hate this as well, use the 3 principles, or I'm doing the 3 principles. It's like, you can't do what you are. Yeah, exactly. Honey. This is how life lives through you. Yeah. And this is how you understand your experience. And just as I can understand it, I can completely misunderstand it. you know?
That's just the natural thing. Exactly. And that's when you were talking about young people before too, I think, when they haven't had that life experience to know that we, you know, we have the high moods, we have the low moods, and that is just, you know, our natural set point is to come back up again to that state of well-being. But when they haven't had enough to look back on, when they're in that down place, it feels like that's all they're experiencing, and sometimes it feels like, well, I'm always in this place.
Yeah.
Because when you're down there.
Absolutely.
So I know that there are so many ways that people can work with you. I know that you do individuals, groups. I mean, your website is fabulous, I have to
do you
say.
like it? Because
I
I'm
love
changing it.
Oh, no, don't. It's got so many great things on it. How on earth do you have the time to do it all?
Oh, do you know what? We're given what we're meant to do.
Yes.
Do you know? So
Yeah.
I love the really intimate work.
Yeah.
That's what I really love, is the intensives and the retreats and the workshops, whether they're online or in person. I love that. I love the vibe of it all, you know, and really getting to know another soul. And you can do that online as well, but there's something really special
In
when
person.
when you're in a room with someone. But, you know, sort of I find it's so interesting, sort of, I'd said to my husband at the tail end of last year, I'm like, oh, I love doing intensives. And then this year it's just been intensive. All these intensives getting booked up, and I'm like, yes, because I just love it.
Yeah.
But what I find is that it's time when there's enough, and then my diary goes quiet.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like life ebbs and flows. We go through periods of contraction, we go through periods of expansion. And life knows that sometimes I just need to get really quiet. And that's one of the reasons I'm out here, Del. I've come out to LA for this conference and see you and to meet Mia, is I know that I have to get quiet this week.
Yeah.
You know, because I can think I'm quiet because there's nothing going on that I know in my mind, but there's more. There's way more.
Well, you have an amazing podcast, which I highly recommend. You have blogs. I've just signed up for your Missing Link book club. I hear amazing things about that too. So there's so many ways that people can work with you. So just share your website again so people know how to contact you.
Oh, it's just www.jacquieforde.com. Jackie and Forde are spelt completely strangely because I wanted to be windswept and interesting. And I'm sure Dale will spell that for you.
I will. It's actually on on the YouTube channel. You'll see it there. So, well, again, I just can't thank you enough. It's been so amazing. I wish I had about 10 hours with you, but next time you come over, I'm going to grab you again. See if you can come in.
Thank you, Dale. I've really enjoyed being a guest. It's lovely. It's lovely to sit opposite you
and
have this conversation.
I know.